You know, some stories just feel like they're made for Hollywood, right? Well, this is one of them. We're going to dive into a story that's about baseball, sure, but it's also about so much more. War, massive social shifts, and how sports can literally change a country. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Chewing gum, World War II, and lipstick. In the same sentence as baseball? It sounds like the start of a really weird joke, I get it. But believe me, the answer is this incredible piece of sports history that completely blew the doors off what people thought was possible.
And there it is, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. It all started because, well, they had to do something during the war, but it turned into this huge cultural moment, something that really left its mark on sports forever.
So let's get into it. How did this whole thing even happen? Well, our story kicks off right in the middle of World War II. It was a time of crisis for the whole world, but weirdly enough, it cracked open a door for women in sports that had been slammed shut for a long, long time. Just try to picture it. You've got these huge baseball stars, guys like Joe DiMaggio, and they're trading their baseball uniforms for army uniforms. All of a sudden, the biggest stadiums in the country were facing the very real possibility of just going dark. And for a country in the middle of a war, needing something to cheer for, that was a huge deal.
And that's when Philip K. Wrigley steps in. And yeah, I'm talking about that Wrigley, the chewing gum guy. He had this wild, radical idea. He was convinced that women weren't just good enough to play, they were good enough to keep the whole sport alive for the country. It was a massive risk, for sure, but man, did it pay off.
So the game they played, it was this really cool mix, kind of like a mashup of softball and baseball. You had the underhand pitching from softball, but then you had the super aggressive base running from baseball, stealing bases, leading off, the whole 9 yards. It was designed to be exciting, and oh yeah, those uniforms, they're a story all by themselves.
And this is where things get complicated. It's the central contradiction of the entire league. Because on the one hand, these women were expected to be total beasts on the field, tough, competitive, top-tier athletes. But the second they stepped off the diamond, they had to follow a whole different rulebook. I mean, just look at this. It really shows you the crazy tightrope they had to walk. They're playing these brutal 1,008 game seasons, right? And then they're forced to go to charm school. Seriously, charm school run by a beauty guru. They had to have long hair, and they were required to wear makeup. During games, can you even imagine? And that whole look like a lady thing? It wasn't just annoying, it was literally painful. Those famous one-piece dresses looked great, sure, but they offered zero protection. So every time a player slid into a base, they'd get these awful, raw scrapes. They called them strawberries. And with the schedule they played, those things almost never had a chance to heal. Just a constant, painful reminder of the rules. Life on the road for these players was nothing like what pro athletes experience today. You got to remember, a lot of these women were just teenagers. So each team had a chaperone, this person who was kind of like a coach, a nurse, and a parent all rolled into one. And they didn't stay in hotels. They actually lived with local families in their team's town, which is pretty amazing when you think about the bonds they must have formed. So even with all these crazy rules and challenges, Wrigley's big gamble totally worked. This league wasn't just some little thing to pass the time during the war. No way. It blew up. It became a national phenomenon. Get a load of this number. Over 900,000. That's how many fans came to watch these games in a single season back in 1948. Just let that sink in for a second. This wasn't some minor league sideshow. This was the real deal, a major sporting event that had the whole country hooked. And let's be clear, they weren't just playing for fun. These women were pros. They were earning up to $85 a week, which back then was way more than the average woman was making in a factory job. This was a real career, a way for them to make a good living and be independent. And it was bigger than just baseball, you know? It was also about patriotism. You can see here, before every game, the players would line up in a V for victory formation. It was a really powerful way to show they were part of the war effort on the home front. They weren't just ball players. They were doing their part to boost morale for the entire country. Okay, so for all the ways this league was so progressive and forward-thinking, we have to talk about a major blind spot. It was still a product of its time, and that means we have to address a really difficult part of its history. An unwritten rule that kept the league segregated. From day one, the league followed the same practice of racial segregation that was happening in Major League Baseball. And the sad result of that is that not one single African-American woman ever got the chance to play in the AAGPBL. And this is a really important idea to understand. It's called de facto segregation. What that means is there was no law, no official rule written down anywhere that said black players weren't allowed. It was just an understanding, a custom, a barrier that you couldn't see but you absolutely could not cross.
And what's really striking is that even when things started to change in men's baseball, when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in 1947, the AAGPBL just didn't. This league that was supposed to be so revolutionary stayed segregated for its entire existence. But just because black women couldn't play in the AAGPL doesn't mean they weren't playing professional baseball. You had these absolute trailblazers, women like Toni Stone, Mamie Peanut Johnson, and Connie Morgan, who were so good they played in the men's Negro Leagues. Their stories are just incredible and show you that talent will always find a way. So where did this incredible league end up? What's its legacy? Let's talk about what happened and what we can take away from its story, both the good and the bad. Well, after the war ended and the soldiers started coming home, things in the country started to shift back. The whole culture was pushing women back into more traditional roles. And so, that special moment in time that created the league, it was over. After 12 amazing seasons, the league played its final game and folded in 1954.
But the story doesn't really end there, does it? Because for 12 years, these women proved something huge. They proved that a women's pro sports league could be a massive success. They were true pioneers. You can draw a straight line from them to the passage of Title IX and to the awesome women's pro sports leagues we have today. They really did pave the way.
Think about it. They were told to play like men and look like ladies, all while carrying the hopes of a country on their shoulders. And they didn't just do it, they knocked it out of the park. Their story is this incredible reminder of what can happen when talent gets a real opportunity. It makes you wonder, right? What barriers are still out there in sports today, and who are the pioneers that are going to be the ones to tear them down next?